All right, on to the GOP health care bill. Clearing a key hurdle in the House Budget Committee, but just barely a reflection of the tension within the GOP, let alone with Democrats, about whether or not this is the right way to move forward. The CNN whip count, okay, is at 21 as of 11 p.m. Eastern time last night. That is relevant because it means if that many Republicans don't vote for it, they would not have enough votes to pass this bill. So what does the White House do now? Let's bring in the panel. Jason Johnson, Abby Phillip, David Gregory. David Gregory, the whip count, we're going to have the whip on later today. And he's going to be talking on the show this morning about how he feels about his own count and his ability to get people there. This is unusual to be fighting with your own on something like this that is so fundamental. But assuming that they're anywhere near 21, what does that mean about what needs to get done?
Well, they've got to negotiate over this bill, and the Speaker's got to exercise his leadership. I keep thinking in recent days about what former Speaker John Boehner said about why there would never be a replacement to Obamacare. He said because Republicans have never agreed on the way forward on health care. And you're seeing this, and of course that disagreement extends over to the Senate as well. I think the only problem to me with the whip count now is that it's capturing a moment in time that can move. I think there's going to be changes to the health care law. I think ultimately the White House will drive some of that, whatever the path is to getting agreement. And I do think this will ultimately test Speaker Ryan's leadership on this. I think as it keeps moving through committee like it has in the Budget Committee, despite disagreement, the more he's going to get members to get on board if they want to see anything like tax reform or if they want to see changes down the line. And I think some of that implicit promise will be, look, some of these things will be dealt with once we get to a conference committee.
You know, Professor, to you, I mean, I think it's a very important point. It's made it through these three committees so far. And what lawmakers on the House side right now and then the Senate side later want to be the lawmaker that breaks this. I mean, you saw Lisa Murkowski of Alaska running away from Armanu Raju because she did not want to answer the simple question of how she was going to vote, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they may not love this bill or even like it, but they also don't want to be the one to break it.
They don't want to be the one who breaks it, but here's the other thing. They're also the ones who will suffer the consequences at the voting booth, and that's why they're concerned. That's why John Boehner, Dave was right, why John Boehner said they're not going to be able to figure this out. And that's why I've said before that the replacement bill will come out on, Wednesday, the 7th of November of 2018, after the midterms, because I don't think anybody right now wants to push this bill through as much as the Republicans want to do tax reform. And you've got to get rid of the ACA before you can do tax reform. They see these town halls, and they don't want to face the consequences for it. And unless Donald Trump can convince them, look, I'll have your back and I'll visit every single district and make sure you get reelected, they're not going to do it.
But to Boehner's point, this is the first time where they've been in the crosshairs of getting it done because they have the power. So now they're in a different situation than just not agreeing. They have to figure out what to do. This is the same problem, Abby Phillip, that they are dealing with on the budget side. To the professor's point, yeah, it sounds good when you're arguing cut, cut, cut until you have to pay for those cuts at the polls in your own district. This got summed up really well in an interview with Pete Alexander from NBC and Mulvaney, the head of the OMB, the budget man. Listen to this.
We can't spend money on programs just because they sound good.
There's a program called The Shine that's in Pennsylvania, rural counties of Pennsylvania, that provides after-school educational programs for individuals in those areas, which just so happens to be the state that helped propel President Trump to the White House. I'm curious what you say to those Americans in a community where they tell me today that 800 individuals will no longer, children who need it most, will no longer be provided in those most needy of communities the educational care they need.
Let's talk about after-school programs generally. They're supposed to be educational programs, right? And that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to help kids who don't get fed at home get fed so they do better in school. Guess what? There's no demonstrable evidence they're actually doing that. There's no demonstrable evidence they're actually helping results, helping kids do better in school.
Now, Professor, actually, we'll start with you, Abby, and we'll come to the professor. That was a very controversial thing for Mulvaney to say because I'm sure we all had the same experience. I had tons of experts dumping information on my head all night about all these benefits they see to kids from these programs.
It's false. I mean, let's show you guys some of the evidence. You've got this Harvard study in 2008. The Harvard study clearly said it helps kids with attendance, lower dropout rates, better performance in schools. You've got a study from last year from the After School Alliance. It said every dollar spent on these after-school programs equals $2.50 saved in crime-related costs. You can't dispute that stuff.
So, Abby, is this about having a number cruncher out there arguing policy, or how do you explain that disconnect?
Well, Mulvaney is trying to make a blanket statement that covers a wide range of cuts, and that's part of the problem with this budget is that the administration is trying to make up funds in order to raise defense spending. So they just have to make some really deep domestic cuts, and the only way to do that is to do it in a fairly draconian way, and there is no explanation for individual programs, so it was sort of intended to be a blanket statement, but that's in essence the problem here. You know, Mulvaney's talking about in some cases, the community development block grants. He made a blanket statement that those block grants are ineffective. There's a lot of evidence out there that the money the money that comes from the federal government that goes to states for those block grants do fund programs that are in fact effective. And you have even Republicans saying, you know, these cuts are arbitrary, and we can't move forward with arbitrary cuts like this because, frankly, you know, starting with Meals on Wheels, a program that feeds seniors, these are the people that vote. These are people who go to the ballot box at the midterms.
Did you hear Chris
and
Collins?
In the general election.
Chris Collins is a congressman, Republican, Western New York. He's on the show a lot. He has shown an amazing ability to look the other way on things that Trump
Not
has
on
said.
this, though.
He said, I would not vote to reduce a single dollar of Meals on Wheels. He knows his hard-hit people up in Buffalo and those areas need this. And that's something you're going to see reflected in a lot of places. True or false?
Of course you are. I mean, look, we had years during the Reagan years and during the Bush years where people were like, hey, we got to save Big Bird. Well, that's a fictional character, okay? But this is grandma and grandpa. These are the people that you see at retirement homes. These are the people who are community activists and regular folks. You can't justify starving seniors. And that's literally how this is going to come across. And I think a lot of these programs that the Trump administration is saying they're going to get rid of, it's a crazy Christmas list, but most of this stuff isn't going to show up under the tree.
And remember, they chose to leave entitlements alone,
Exactly.
except what they're going to deal with Medicaid.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's why you land where you land on this one, if you're not going to touch entitlements at all. All right.
Lady, gentlemen, no, you cannot, David Gregory, on St. Patrick's
didn't
Day.
I get a slice here at
You know
this?
what? I'll get you back somewhere else. Secretary of State